What is happening, guys, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video we're going to be checking out the brand new Transformers Legacy Evolution Core Class Dinobot Sludge. This is the first part in what is going to be a six-part Dinobot combiner, which is going to form Volcanicus, and I'm actually quite excited. It's been quite a long time since we got our last Legend Scale combiner. You know, we've got Devastator for the Revenge of the Fallen toy line, we saw Abominus, and then most recently I think it was Infernicus for the Transformers The Last Night toy line, so they're quite fun to mess around with, but as we all know, compromises have to be made, and that is definitely what we're going to see in today's video. Now, as we jump into the packaging, we get some pretty cool artwork of Sludge in his Dino and Robot mode. As we come around to the back, we get some product shots for better or for worse, and like I said previously, 1 out of 6. So I imagine the 6th member is going to be Dinobot Scar. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And here we have Sludge as he comes packaged in his Robot mode. Now, to be honest, there's really no way to sugarcoat this. He does look monstrous, especially as we take a look at these huge things hanging out on the side of the hips, but you do have to bear a few things in mind. This is only a core class, so engineering just straight away is slightly restricted. It's a lot cheaper when in comparison to your average figure, and if we actually compare him to some of the past almost Legend Scale combiners, this isn't too far-fetched, and if anything, is probably going to be one of the better ones we've seen. Now, as we take a look at the details, I actually really like the way the head looks. It's been painted front to back, so that's really cool. We do get some pretty decent details for the chest. I mean, the red paint and the black looks sweet, but the arms are just way too far apart, which is a little unfortunate, but decent sculpt work. I do actually like the surface detail. It reminds me of his Studio Series counterpart, but I think the biggest issue that I and many collectors have with this would have to be these side things. I mean, they are just so massive and ugly, and it's because he essentially forms the hips of Volcanicus, so they need to be big, they need to be sturdy, and in a core class, there really is sadly no place to hide these. And as we take a look at the shins, these don't look too bad. We get some tiny little golden toes, and as we come around to the back, to be honest, it is what you would expect. Not the best, but I mean, at the end of the day, what are you going to do? It is part of a combiner. Now, articulation-wise, he does get a little swivel here at the head, which I was quite surprised to see. We get some very stiff ball joints here in the shoulders and nothing out of the elbows. Now, the design team said this was due to structural integrity when you actually get him fully combined, and yeah, I can see that, especially when I actually transform him into his third mode in just a second. We do get a tiny bit of waist rotation. To be honest, it's more of a mid-torso joint, but this can rotate left to right. And then we take a look at the hips. So basically, the point of articulation is at this section. So as we bring this forward, it literally looks like you've snapped his knee in half and the hips have been left behind. So as we lift that up, yeah, that's looking a little funky, but they can kick forwards that far, a little bit in and outwards. Here for the knees, these can go forwards and backwards, but again, it just looks super ugly and wonky. So I think I'm probably going to keep this guy in his Dino mode until we actually get all 6 combiners, and then sadly we don't get nothing out of the ankles at all. But just to showcase how that looks again, as you guys can see, the hips are actually not where you would expect them to be. The leg is held on via this section, so a little bizarre. Sadly, he doesn't come with any accessories, so no blaster or no sword, but one thing which is worth mentioning is that the Dino head, much like the Studio Series version, is a separate piece that you'll have to attach out of the packaging. Now, as we jump into a few comparisons, here he is alongside the core class Optimus Prime, G2 Megatron, which is the same mold as the regular Generation 1 Kingdom version, Soundwave, Hot Rod, Iguanus, Bumblebee, the Deluxe class Bumblebee, Earthrise Optimus, oh hang on a sec, that's not right, Earthrise Optimus Prime, and finally the big guy himself, the Studio Series Leader Sludge. Now, transformation-wise, the instructions do show robot to combine mode and then combine mode to Dino mode, so that's what I'll showcase for this video. But first of all, we do get this kind of targeting system, which, yes, you can take a big old blast effect to smack that in there and have him almost Iron Man repulsoring some of those Decepticons into oblivion, which I thought was quite cool. But let's get into the combine mode transformation. So it's actually quite easy. We just basically take the arms, fold these sections here upwards. Very thick plastic for a core class. This guy definitely does feel dense, despite him having a few hollow spaces and definitely some wonky angles. We'll then take these sections here, rotate those outwards on both sides, and then basically you're going to want to swing this up, and there is a tiny cutout which is just going to slide into that tab. So snap that in there, do the exact same here for this side, so snap this section into place. For some reason, it's always a little more tricky on this side, and there is him in combine mode. So at the moment, not looking like too much, but from some of the product shots we've seen of this combined with Slug, it's actually going to look quite promising once we do get that whole upper torso. These are going to be the hips, and yes, these are fossilizer compatible, so you could peg some of those kind of dino legs in there if you wanted to. And I imagine what's going to happen here is that Slug is going to peg into these huge ports, and then there's going to be some tabs on the outside that the arms will actually snap into, and it's going to make sense. It's definitely going to make sense. I'm holding holding out hope for Volcanicus, but at the moment, standalone robot mode not looking too funky. Now let's get him transformed up into Dino mode, which to be honest is super simple, and I think that's what's going to be the major charm with some of these core Dinobots, is that they're going to be very easy to convert, just fun to mess around with, and let's face it, they're toys, so they should be enjoyable. So to kickstart things off, you're going to want to take the Dino head, just lift it up slightly, we can then hinge these sections out, bring these pieces into the center of the chest, and then just tab the arms in. We can then rotate here at the torso, so the front is now facing the back, come around to the back, combine this section here, flip the tail forwards, and then the hands are actually going to tuck into these tiny cavities, and then this tab is just going to hook itself in there like that, and then we snap the head into place, and there we have Sludge transformed up into his Dino mode. And to be honest, this actually doesn't look too bad. I quite like the way this one looks, decently detailed, very easy transformation, so I thought that was quite neat. And as we take a look at the details, that is a pretty decent looking head sculpt. I do like the paint, we get the Autobot logo, a little bit of hollowness here for the neck, but again, it's a core class, essentially a triple changer, so I mean, can I complain that much? Honestly guys, I don't think so. We get a tiny bit of hollowness here in the center of the chest, but some decent metallic silver, and the proportions may appear to be a little off. I mean, he has some very tiny front legs, and then these massive chunky back ones, but from a side perspective, honestly, not looking that bad. He has a little bit of a stubby tail, but not the end of the world. I think these are actually going to be really fun once we get all 6 of them, so that is something worth bearing in mind. No articulation here at all. He is essentially a big old brick, but quite chunky, and for a core class, a pretty decently feeling one. Now, for a few comparisons here in the Dino mode, we won't go super crazy like we did in bot mode, but here he is compared alongside Prime in his bot mode. Here he is next to the Kingdom Starscream, so definitely quite a small character, kind of reminds me of a little chess piece as well. And then finally, here we have him alongside what appears to be a colossal sized Dinobot, that being our leader Sludge. So, as you guys can see, definitely a lot smaller than this big guy as you would expect, but for a core class, really is the Dino mode that bad? I actually think it's pretty decent, if I'm going to be honest. And wrapping up on this review for the Legacy core class Sludge. Overall, I'm quite conflicted as to how to round this video off. I mean, in terms of robot mode, yes, it's compromised due to the combining gimmick, but you have to bear in mind this is only a core class. Here in the UK, it retails for roughly £12 to £13, and I actually think that when we get all 6 of these, it's going to make way more sense as you would expect, and they're just going to be an enjoyable, fun set. I mean, I was a big fan of the Easy Collection Devastator that we saw for the Revenge of the Fallen toy line. All of those individual robots, they were pretty crap, but it was just fun to be able to disassemble that in a few simple steps and then reassemble it into a pretty cool Gestalt, and I think that's exactly what it's going to be like here for Volcanicus, or if anything, it may be a bit better, as I think the standalone robot mode and Dino mode of this guy is better than some of those past Legends combiners such as Infernicus and Abominus, etc. I really do think it's just going to come down to personal preference. If you can look past the flaws and just have fun with these figures, I think there is something to be had here, and it's going to be retooled into Dino King, so maybe if Volcanicus doesn't float your boat, that character may. I'd love to get your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you guys think? And until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.